before we ask the media for the questions, I got several already questions here. Can we ask one question sent by one of the media people watching via Facebook Live for Miss Lila Ramos Shahani? Sabi ng isang journalist, how do you feel now? What is your reaction to the Department of Foreign Affairs of the country today regarding this issue? Ako naman, I would like to add na our speaker's grandfather was the distinguished former DFA Secretary Narciso Ramos, and her late mother was also once Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs. Your answer, your reaction to the DFA and the seeming silence on this issue?
Well, thank you for the question. To tell you the truth, I am more than deeply disappointed with the DFA. And I say that, when I started in government, in the 2010s, I could have started at the DFA, but I felt, well, I've lived all over the world, I've been forced to learn all these languages, I'm not going to learn anything new. I should go to the National Anti-Poverty Commission where I learn a lot. So I did. Then I went to the Department of Social Welfare and I learned a lot. And I felt, I need to know more about the poor in the Philippines, the income poor, the food poor, the opportunity poor, and it was very good for me. But then I realized political solutions are limited, and I had to go back to education. And so I took this job at UNESCO at the DFA. But, my grandfather was an intellectual, and so was my mother. And so I just thought, if I go to DFA, I'll be with like-minded people. They're very well-traveled people. And to tell you the truth, that's not at all what I found. I remember, I had 3 bosses in a short span of time. So Secretary Jun Yasay, Alan Peter Cayetano, and then Teddy Boy Locsin. And I must say, when we would have gender and development meetings, and my mother was the author of the Gender and Development Law, which means 5% of an agency's budget should be used to teaching the staff of that agency about gender. So we went on a GAD, Gender and Development outreach in the province in a beautiful hotel, and I really thought we were going to talk about gender. So I was there for 3 days in a fancy hotel, drinking champagne and wine. And I said, so when are we going to talk about gender? I'm really, really interested to hear what you all have to say about, feminization of labor in the Middle East and, human rights violations. And they said, oh, we don't really have any problem with gender anymore. We're very, very good when it comes to gender. So we're just going to make this weekend a team building session, and we can play games and bond with one another. And I saw my mother's gender and development budget being used for manicure, pedicure, Suarez, and I just felt really sad. And what I noticed in DFA is what people said. It was a sunflower mentality. And I said, what's sunflower? And they said, ma'am, we follow the sun. Whoever is the sun, we follow. And so I was thinking, I served President Noynoy Aquino, and everyone in DFA was anti-China. Then we served Rodrigo Duterte, suddenly everybody is pro-China. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you, as an intelligent, thinking, educated person who's been in the civil service corps for 20 years, what's in your brain? And what is your intellectual capital? And I found that DFA, at least under the Duterte administration, you weren't allowed to ask questions. You just obeyed. And I was quite disappointed intellectually. And I found that, there were certain things like under Teddy Boy Locsin, my boss, there were certain things like, okay, we're going to accept whatever America has to say. They want to move the embassy, they want to move the Philippine embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, to Kowtow, to the Jewish lobby. And I felt that we cannot think like lackeys. And that's the tragedy, is that our officials often do. I mean, and I think that our educational system makes us think in a very simplistic way. It's like, this person is good, that person is bad. But if you're capable of thinking analytically and with nuance, you will realize that the Spanish colonial rule had many abuses against the Filipinos. You just have to read the Noli and the Fili, right? The American colonial rule, there were so many abuses against Filipinos. You just have to read up on the Filipino-American War. So it's not just the Japanese and the Filipinos themselves. In other words, it's not a matter I'm clean and you're dirty. As a matter of fact, we are all responsible. And there is no fixed subject, no oppressor, no fixed oppressed. Everybody is potentially oppressive. And everybody at one point or another was oppressed. And so I would urge us to be vigilant about ourselves. I would also say, it's embarrassing to me that, Lauren Lagarda, there's all this money, we're gonna give money to Harvard, we're gonna give money to NYU. Okay, fine, but what about Philippine institutions, which desperately need to be built up? And I would say, for example, I would like a Filipino diplomat to fight for the repatriation, not just of the Balangiga bells, but the vast collection of Filipino ethnographic artifacts that are in the bodega of the Smithsonian. You require a diplomat, I'm sorry to use the term, with balls to say, hey, if Djibouti can ask for its artifacts and Ethiopia and Greece and India, why do we not have? And it's the same thing that Ma'am Tessie was saying. It's like, why is Japan acknowledging the Korean comfort women, but not the Filipino and not the Chinese? Well, it's because the Philippine government is not fighting for the Filipino comfort women. And we bow. How can you bow when the 1987 Constitution is very clear about an independent foreign policy? What is independent about our foreign policy? And I just, I remember when, my mother was one of the two drafters of the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, the CEDAW. And she drafted it many years ago, but she was still working at the DFA under Carlos P. Romulo. And there was a Russian diplomat, because in the United Nations, it's like they seat you in the General Assembly, they seat you alphabetically. So P is next to R, so she was close to Russia, and she and a Russian diplomat crafted the CEDAW law. And I remember Carlos P. Romulo threatened to fire her for fighting this convention. I was there, and I remember these kilometric faxes saying, "How dare you take the initiative to fight for women? Don't you know that you are aligning with Russia, which is our enemy in the Cold War?" And my mother was saying, "But sir, it's about women. It doesn't matter who, it's about protecting the rights of women." But she was almost fired. And this is what I mean. The only time the government responded to the Malaya Lolas was after this lady to my left went to CEDAW. And I mean, the very disappointing thing is that Noynoy Aquino, before he was president, was so supportive of the comfort women, and then suddenly he's president. 2010, 2014, the Supreme Court, they basically said, "Look, it's not our problem. We don't really want to get involved." Now, I want to point one thing, okay? For Filipinos who think Americans are so great, Chinese are so bad, it's a lot more complicated than that. Did you know that MacArthur himself knew about the biological experimentations on the Chinese during the Japanese occupation? MacArthur knew about the comfort women. I've read the U.S. Army files. He knew. And instead of making Hirohito responsible, he changed him from an absolute monarch to a constitutional monarch. In effect, it was a pardon. Why? Because he needed Japan in the Cold War fight against the Soviet Union. This is in diplomacy what you call brinkmanship. It's like a great game. And you think about what is the gain for strategic and economic gain for your country. I understand that. But it should not be at the expense of your country's poor, especially the poor women who are always the collateral damage. Now, if you look at what happened in 2010 and 2014 vis-a-vis the comfort women and the Malaya Lola fight, you will see that Secretary Albert Del Rosario, he could have fought for the comfort women. Noynoy Aquino could have fought for the comfort women, but they didn't. Why? Because their bigger fight was the court tribunal regarding the South China Sea. And they were so concerned about fighting China that they wanted allies. And I understand why in diplomacy you have to do that. But ironically, in the way that MacArthur chose the higher good of, fighting the Soviet Union, Albert Del Rosario chose the higher good of fighting against China. And what I'm saying is that does not have to be the kind of simplistic diplomacy that our country practices. We can be nuanced. We can find our allies while saying, yes, thank you, Japan. You have given us an enormous amount of ODA. We appreciate the Teresa Magbanua vessel. We recognize that you named it Teresa Magbanua to signify a Filipina fighting against Spanish and American colonial rule. But that does not change the fact that comfort women, Filipino comfort women, like Korean comfort women, should be officially acknowledged and recognized and should receive compensation. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Miss Attorney Virgie Suarez has to go to the Supreme Court because she's a lawyer, but she has a request and also others has a request. There's a question for the sculptor Mr. Jonas Roses bago umalis si Atty. Virgil Suarez. Gusto niya malaman daw ano nangyari daw sa statue and kung nasaan na daw baka we could give a microphone or we could invite him to come here. Mr. Jonas, baka pwede ka daw imbitahin dito. Tatanungin daw ni Atty. Virgil and Miss Lila Shahani and Miss Sharon Silva and Miss Teresita Ang See. Gusto nila malaman saan paano tinago yan kasi ang laki. Ang laki kahit na 10 tao, even 3 people could not move the statue. Gano'ng kalaki yung statue? Jonas, dito ka sa harap na lang. Gano'ng kalaki kasi it's a big statue made of
Made of bronze po siya.
made of bronze. Gano'ng kalaki?
Bronze po, bronze. 7 feet.
7 feet tall bronze statue. So how many kilos yan?
Almost 300 to
300 kilos. So it could not have just
So, paano
run away.
nanakaw yun?
Oo, paano ninakaw ng tao na...
I mean, how is that possible?
May tanong si Miss Lila Shahani and Miss Teresita Ang See and Miss Sharon Silva. Saka si attorney bago siya pumunta sa Supreme Court. Pakisagot lang.
That time po kasi medyo sobrang magulo yung sitwasyon ko noon. So as individual, ordinaryong tao lang po ako, hindi ko kayang i-handle yung situation. So hanggang dumating sa time na pagising ko wala na siya.
Klaseng
Ni hindi mo
lugar.
ni-report sa barangay, ni hindi mo ni-report sa pulis. So paano sasabihin mo na wala yun nasa loob ng iyong studio? So please huwag ka na magsinungaling, sabihin mo katotohanan para matulungan ka rin namin. Kasi handa na kami mag-file ng kaso laban sa iyo eh.
Yes po, actually, hindi naman talaga siya nawawala. Actually, anytime pwede kong i-rate ulit. And then, yung pong nawawala is physical structure lang po siya. And ako naman po yung creator niya, anytime pwede ko mag-create ng isa. So, naniniwala po ko na
So mabibigyan ka ng 2 milyon para i-recreate yung statue? Is that what you mean?
Ma'am, ordinaryong tao lang po ako. Hindi po ako, ang sandigan ko pala is God lang sandigan ko.
Baka,
No, but ang pinaka-ordinaryong tao dito ay ang mga comfort women. Maliban sa'yo, I mean, mas grabe ang naranasan nila. Ginagalang ko po na mahirap din ang sitwasyon ninyo. Ginagalang ko yun. Kaya lang, hindi naman ikaw o ako, hindi naman tayo ang sentro dito. Ang masakit po sa akin, yung marami kayong nag-interview kayo ng mga former comfort women, kinausap nyo sila, tapos ngayon, masyado silang nasaktan at na-disappoint sa nangyari. And masama ang loob namin na sila ang nasaktan.
Jonas, no, actually, FlowersForLolas, no, we sent a demand letter, no. I was the one who prepared a demand letter to Jonas. In fact, talagang we're ready to file a case. Of course, we have been very, very considerate of you, Jonas. Kaya lang talagang, you owe it to the lolas. Huwag ka nang dumagdag doon sa mga, ng biktima doon sa mga lola natin. No? Binayaran ka doon, no? 2 milyon. It is not fair. No? It's not, hindi pwede yung parang sinasabi mo na physical lang yon. Because that amounted to 2 million. No? Para madali mo lang igawin, because that's another gastos, di ba? Ibig sabihin, Jonas, as I said dun sa my demand letter, that will be at your own expense. Pero more than that, it's not really believable, no? Sabi mo, ilang kilos again? 300, no? Plus kilos. Kinailangan pa nga natin ng creator para yan di ba, yung mga sinabi mo sa amin na kakailanganin dahil nga ganun kabigat, hindi madala sa baklaran. Para sabihin mo ngayon na paggising mo, na wala na siyang parang bula, you're not being candid, you're not being honest to all of us. Kasi hindi pwede yun na merong ganun kalaking estatwa na wala lang sa bahay mo, gated yung bahay mo, hindi ka nagising, di ba? Sabihin, meron kang dapat gawin dahil, 2 milyon yun Pagkatapos na wala lang, meron kang responsibility dun That statue was under your custody. Ikaw yung may hawak doon. It was pinagkatiwala sa iyo para itago at para mailipat ng Flowers for Lolas sa iba. And all throughout, nakikipag-communicate ka, Jonas, di ba? It's missing Lolas now. You're the only na tao makakapagsabi talaga. I mean, be honest, no? I mean, that's the only thing that you can give to the Lolas, yung honesty mo. Sabihin mo, kasi wala kang ginawa, hindi ka nag-report sa barangay, hindi mo, walang blatter, meron kang statwang nawala na 2 milyon ang halaga, na 300 plus kilos, tapos wala kang ginawa. That is unbelievable, Jonas. Anyway, Jonas, I already sent the demand letter to you. Anyway, sana you be honest dito, no, sa lahat ng mga tao dito. More than to us, you owe it to the Lolas. Magandang umaga po.
Sige, siguro to cut the alam naman na
May
natin.
kaso sa Supreme Court kailangan siya tumakbo. Abogado siya sa isang kaso sa Supreme Court. Kaya,
Okay. Jonas,
Jonas, may tanong pa si Ms. Sharon Silva.
siguro para makatulong na sa ating lahat, makatulong din sa ating bansa, makatulong sa cause ng lahat ng
Pwede
mga
ba
comfort
ibalik,
women all over the world, baka pwedeng banggitin mo, sino ba yung nagpunta dun sa workshop mo at kinuha yung sinabi mong kinuha yung statwa na yon. Sa pinaka-minimum, mabanggit mo, meron bang Japanese official na kasamang kumuha nun? Pero pinaka-mainam, sabihin mo na sa amin, sinong kumuha?
Salamat po sa pagkakataon sa pag-imbita. Actually, nandito po ako para unti-unti kong linawin yung sa part ko. Hindi ko po kayo masagot diretso kasi medyo mahirap po akong ipaliwanag yung part ko dahil kahit po ako struggle din eh. Pwede ko sabihin na ako din po nahihirapan. Kaya nandito po ako ngayon, siguro para magpagtulungan sa part nyo, magpagtulungan po din sa kaso ng missing 2.0 statue. So, yun lang po siguro masasabi ko sa mga.
Jonas, naintindihan ko yung point mo na ordinaryong tao lang ako, na dinig ko na medyo natakot ka, at yung buhay mo na ninervyos ka, sa tingin mo nasa panganib, ginagalang ko yon. Kaya lang, alam din natin na kinommission ka ng National Historical Commission of the Philippines to handle all the Mactan markers, no? And you did a lot of work. So, kung takot po kayo sa gobyerno, nakipagtrabaho din kayo sa gobyerno. So, nakakapagtaka nga talaga.
Before po naman, marami naman po akong project sa government kahit before pa akong po. Marami po akong mga government commission before pa yung po. So, hindi ko po iniisip na connected yun. Ibang trabaho later sa cage po ng Pupuan Statue.
Sige, sana panindigan mo yung pangako mo na tulungan mo kami kasi talagang ang issue na ito, hindi ito matatapos eh. 'Di ba? Isang issue of national and international significance ito. And I tell you, Jonas, huwag ka masyadong matakot dun sa mga makapangyarihan. Sumalig ka rin dun sa mamamayan ng bansa natin at international community na interesado at susuporta rin sa issue na ito.
Kasi
Kasi ang
ginagamit ka lang
Philippine governments come and go, no? Kaya panindigan mo, I mean, magtiwala ka dun sa lakas din na kayang i-generate ng international at local public.
Wala naman po akong pinatataotan. Actually, kaya nandito po ako, gusto kong harapin. Gusto ko bang ipaliwanag yung part ko kung saan nangyari. So kung ano po yung kaya kong itutukot po.
Pero wala akong nakuha, hindi pa rin maliwanag sa akin kung anong nangyari. Paano mawawala ang isang 7.5 feet bronze statue? Nawala, as in, hindi ko nakita. Pwede po bang ilinawin, pakilinaw?
Gano'ng katagal linapas yun, di ba? Di ba? Ikwento mo lang daw, paano daw, ilan sila?
That time po kasi, wala ako dun sa area ko sa workshop. Actually, gabi po siya nawala. Madaling araw. So, parang nung morning, wala na po siya. And then, wala namang posible kasi sa ganyang cases, hindi ko po kayang may paliwanag. Yes.
Nasaan na ngayon?
Hindi ko po alam kung nasaan yung original. Pero meron po akong master copy. Yung master copy niya kung saan siya kinuha. So anytime pong mag-create ng another piece, pwede ko pong gawin.
Well, then gawin ninyo at no cost to them dahil ang bayad nila.
Nabanggit mo dati na ang nagpunta sa iyong workshop ay isang Philippine government official tsaka isang Japanese official. Kung hindi ka man ready ngayon na sabihin ang mga pangalan na yan, do we have your guarantee na yan ay sasabihin mo sa isang official proceeding of whatever na maisip naming gawin? Halimbawa sa korte o kaya sa kongreso, willing ka ba na sabihin yung mga pangalan na yon?
Wala po akong natatandaan na binitawan na salita na kinausap ako ng any government official or Japanese official para doon sa statue ng Kumpuitoman.
So bakit hindi kayo nagagalit na ninakaw ang statue from your house? Trabaho ninyo yun. Hindi ba yung natural reaction is to say, aba, ninakaw yung trabaho ko. Di ba po?
Actually, ni-report po namin sa barangay yan eh. May record po ako sa barangay. And, yun nga po, sa ganyang case, hindi ko po sa ngayon kayang ipaliwanag or
Thank you daw.
disclose.
Okay, sabi mo sa ngayon, pero ibig bang sabihin darating ang araw, sasabihin mo. Ngayon, paano ka namin matutulungan para maisiwalat mo? Kasi, Jonas, hindi sa takot ka sa mga makapangyarihan, hindi ka takot sa taong bayan, di ba? Yung ginagawa mo ng mga project sa gobyerno, this is calling the attention of the NHCP. Pera ng bayan yan. Pera ng bayan. Okay? Yung ginastos para sa Comfort Women Statue, pera ng bayan yan. Hindi isang grupo lang, hindi isang tao ang nangalap ng pondo. So, kung binayaran ka na ng 2 million at kaya mo palang i-replace, i-replica yung statue na yon, then go ahead. Kasi kung hindi, ayaw naming hintayin pa ang panahon na magtatawag kami ng hearing at ng investigation on why what happened really happened. Kasi nung huling pag-uusap namin ni Mayor Estrada at that time, sinabi niya na hindi sila ang nagpapatanggal, hindi sa kanila yung backhoe. Pinabantayan ko pa sa Manila Police Department yung statue. Ang ginawa, umatras yung backhoe, nawala yung backhoe. But then 3 days after, in the middle of the night, the backhoe came back and removed it. No? So sino? Ang sabi ng Manila, hindi sila national government daw, National Department of Public Works at hindi Manila. No, nagtuturuan sila. So who is it? Huling pag-uusap namin, umaga, sabi ko kay naka-schedule na, the crane will go to your studio to get the naka-hire na kami ng truck. That was a few days before Baklaran. Nag-uusap pa kami. Then suddenly nawala siya. Pinapuntahan ko pa sa pulis yan bago namin siya nakita. I asked the Quezon City Police help to look for him to give the demand letter for him to give back the statue, no? Kasi nagtago siya. So we had to go to that extent. We understand you, maaari, Jonas, na totoo, biktima ka rin. Pero makipagtulungan ka sa amin, huwag kang matakot sa people in authority dahil sila mawawala. Ang taong bayan, hindi mawawala yan.
Thank you. Bago ka umalis, may sasabihin din si Miss Lila Shahani.
Hindi, tama na. Maraming salamat,
Thank you.
Jonas. Sana pag-isipan mo.
Baka yung number mo, pwede mo ibigay kay Miss Sharon o kay Miss Tessie, number nila
Yeah.
para contact niya si
Yeah.
Jonas. Oo, pwede mo makuha yung number, bigyan niya kay... Oo.
Basta maraming salamat, no? Sana pag-isipan mo. Yeah. Anyway, I just want to say na we are all paying taxes and these are government institutions. And we have the right to ask how our tax money is spent. Now, the question is, National Historical Commission of the Philippines, why are you calling Magellan a tragic hero? Why are you, putting markers all over the country to honor Magellan's, voyage around the country? Why are you not putting a marker in the comfort women comfort stations, in the Bahay na Pula, or, for example, during the Marcos martial law years, there were around 200,000 Muslim Filipinos that were also killed. Why are they not part of the counting of the oppressed? Why are indigenous people and Moros not counted the way urban Filipino activists are? So I think you need to think about the country in a very inclusive way and hold your institutions to task.
Thank you, Ms. Lila Shahani.
Panel, ano na po ba yung pinaka-latest
Yes.
na ginagawa ng ating mga grupo? Kasi dekada na po nating pinaglalaban yung
Yes.
Filipino comfort women. Ano po ba ang latest na tulong na nagawa natin sa kanila? At secondly, ilan na po ba sila ngayon? Ano na po ang
Ilan na natira?
kalagayan nila ngayon?
Ilan survivors?
Tuloy-tuloy naman yung pagtulong natin dun sa mga ating comfort women. Well, kung isang in terms of yung ang tawag dito, batas, yung SIDO recommendation, no? Na bagamat hindi pa siya na-implement, we did some lobbying with Philippine Congress and also sina Attorney Virgie also spoke with some government agencies so that pending yung implementation ng SIDO, some kind of assistance be rendered to the Lolas. And in fact, nangyari na nga yun, may limited assistance or facilitation of ng access ng mga Lolas to existing government programs under the DSWD. But other than that, there are lobbying activities in Congress calling for yung enabling law that will provide for yung reparations fund, implementation itong SIDO recommendation, and also for the memorialization for the declaration of a national day to commemorate Filipino comfort women. Then other than that, tuloy-tuloy yung pag-address dun sa mga material and health medical needs ng mga lolas natin. In fact, with the support of the FlowersForLolas and other supporters, we do visitations and we facilitate yung mga whoever wants to provide any kind of support for the lolas.
May ba?
Ilan na po sila ngayon? May
Ilan na daw?
na-compensate na po ba?
Konti na lang sila. I think mga around 9 or 10 sa Lila Pilipina and then around, I think, 12, 19 sa Malaya Lolas.
I think the point there is, bakit kinailangan pumunta ang mga Malaya Lolas sa United Nations at mag-appeal sa CEDAW bago in-acknowledge sila ng Philippine government. Samantalang dekada silang humihingi ng acknowledgement from the Philippine government. So why is the Philippine government not protecting and defending its people as a matter of course? You know, in the Supreme Court in 2010 and 2014, sinabi ng Aquino administration, it's not our responsibility to, defend them. What does that mean? Why do you have to go to the UN? We're always going to the UN. It's not necessary. We have very good laws. All we have to do is follow the law. Thank you.
Habol lang po. Sa dekada po natin na pinaglalaban yung karapatan ng mga comfort women, may na-compensate na po ba sa kanila?
Compensation daw.
Wala pa rin.
Teresa.
Yung tinatawag na Asian Women's Fund noong 1990s was actually, bagamat announced and administered by the Japanese government together with the Philippine government, DSWD, I think, at saka DOJ. But it was not the official compensation or reparation that the victims are demanding. Yung Asian Women's Fund came from donations of private Japanese citizens and corporations who were already helping the Lolas anyway since the campaign started. So it was no different from that. Kaya walang kung official compensation ang pag-uusapan, wala.
By the way, tomorrow is December 8th. It's also the 82nd anniversary of the Japanese invasion of the Philippines, coincidentally. Ms. Huang of CCTV.
Yellow from China Central Television. I would like to know, because today our topic for the Comfort Woman, I think like the heritage site or the historic books, that's all because we need to remember this. So I would like to know, do we have any plan to build a museum or something for the memory, for the museum? Yes, because I think I visit Miss Sharon's office. I think that looks like a small museum, has a lot of photos for the Comfort Woman, for the Lolas. And I interviewed the Lolas before. One of them told me that they are the evidence, but because she's requirement for the Japanese government is like the justice, but the Japanese government denied this, and they said that there's no evidence for comfort woman in the Philippines. And the Lola told me that I am the evidence, but this Lola, I think she passed away already. Yeah, and another Lola told me that the Japanese government is just waiting. They die. So I think it's very important to have a museum or something for the memory. And because I don't understand the Tagalog when you talk to the artist, so I would like to know where is the statue is, and if we have plan to have a museum, do we prefer to put this statue again in somewhere else?
Oo.
Si Ms. Teresita Ang See has an important appointment in the City Hall of Manila, so she has to leave earlier also.
Okay. So, actually, there are plans really of maraming plans. There are many plans for the memorialization of the Comfort Women issue. One is we would like to, of course, still look at the possibility of setting up, of putting up a statue, no, of the Comfort Women. And then also there are plans actually of transforming the current Lila Pilipina office into a museum in the future. Because all of the, well, not all, but many of the official testimonies and narratives of the Filipino comfort women are deposited in the office. And you can see also the tapestries that the Lolas made as part of their psychological intervention program that was done in the 1990s. There's actually also a campaign ongoing, and it's being done by the International Committee for the Joint Nomination of Comfort Women Resources. It's a 14-member organization, coalition, that has joined efforts to have these materials, what do you call this, inscribed into the Memory of the World program of UNESCO. But it has been meeting so many delaying tactics on the part of a group of Japanese scholars which have joined the nomination process and have also forwarded, I think, around 8 very few documents, no, that they also want to be inscribed. But the process is ongoing, and we hope that there will be some light, no, about this process in the next year or so. And there are also plans actually of, because there's still so many existing historical structures that were used as Japanese garrisons and where the comfort women were held. In many parts of the country, no? There's still one in Rojas City. Yeah, the original house also that was contained in
Yes.
the medical report,
Yes.
which revealed the existence of Filipino comfort women. That house still exists in Iloilo City, and you can still see it from the highway. There's still also the villa, several villas in Santa Cruz, Laguna, which you also can still see from the National Highway. So there are still many existing historical structures. We all need to do some effort to have
Do you have
this.
a list of all these places?
Yeah, it's actually on the website of
yes.
the Asian Women's Fund.
I-
But we have visited also some of this, and
Yes.
we will be working with either international organizations, local organizations, and the local government units to have these structures memorialized.
Baka Ms. Shahani could assist you. She has
Yes,
a lot
that's
of
why
experience internationally. Sorry, but there's another follow-up question to her question. There's a question by a journalist. There's a news report a few months ago that ABS-CBN Star Cinema Company is doing a serious historical comfort women movie with young actress Kathleen Bernardo as the comfort woman victim and a famous female director. Have you heard of that movie project and were you consulted? And what is your reaction to Kathleen Bernardo going into a sad movie role? Is it true that movie? Did they ask your
Yeah, I
advice? Did they ask you?
Yeah, we've heard about it, and
You've
it's
read about it?
actually yes. Actually, they did not come to us, but it's still a good effort, a positive development if that movie pushes through,
Part
because
of
it
the
features
memorial.
very popular actress now.
I think the most
Kathleen
popular
Bernardo.
actress in the country today.
So I think no, she's the ano ngayon. She's the.
So what is
anyway,
your reaction to that project, the two
It's
of
very
you?
welcome, very welcome. Actually, there's another movie director who's going to do a semi-documentary on the Filipino comfort women
who?
issue, but I can't reveal his
Ah,
name
yes,
yet
yes.
because he's still in the research process.
Yes.
So we can expect another good movie sometime next year or maybe early 2025.
Documentary. Yes, please.
Semi-documentary.
Ms. Shani, what is your reaction to that movie? And
No,
then your answer.
Actually, I'm less interested in the movie. I wanted to
Yes,
address
the
your
museum.
point.
Yes, please.
Your point's very important.
How
and
can you assist?
I want to say that in UNESCO, there's the Memory of the World program, and it's about archives, right? And what happened was China submitted about the Nanjing massacre, and it was recognized, and Japan got very offended. And Japan is one of the biggest donors to the UNESCO system. And essentially Japan said, you know, if you already did the Nanjing, okay, and now you want to do Voices of the Comfort Women, we're going to pull out of the Memory of the World. Now, it's very sad to say, but, you know, the United States under Trump pulled out, Israel wanted to pull out, Japan wanted to pull out, so you have an international organizations that suddenly have these big budgets they cannot fulfill, right? And that began what was called the comprehensive evaluation of the Memory of the World program. And that comprehensive evaluation essentially meant, stop, let's not discuss comfort women, there's no program, zip, right? And even the Philippine ambassador to France, the Philippine ambassador to UNESCO, she agreed, yes, let Japan do a review, you know, let's just stop, right? So what I'm saying is, that's where you have a Filipino diplomat who is basically bowing to Japan. And I would hope that someone in that position would say, no, that Voices of Comfort Women dossier deserves, because, you know, it's thousands of pages. And so many countries contributed, so many scholars contributed. So that's the first answer to your first question. The other thing is you're saying, well, you know, what else is being done? I think in the Asian Women's Fund website, they have a list of all the locations where these comfort stations were. And of course, we have anecdotal evidence from Filipino women about other locations, right? And so what I tried to do during my time was get historical markers from the National Historical Commission to these comfort stations. But that brings me back to the problem of shame. And it's usually male shame at female sexuality. You know, because the women survivors and the women who support them, that the Japanese women diet, they're the ones who gave the money for the Asian Women's Fund. So the Japanese women knew what the Japanese male imperial forces were capable of. That's why they gave money, right? Now, the problem with historical markers in the Philippines is that they're very short, right? There's hardly any analysis or nuance. They're in Filipino, and we have hundreds of languages all over the country. So it's a very formal, non-accessible tradition. And so I think, you know, if we're waiting for the commission to honor poor women, we'll get old, you know? And so what I think I'm trying to do, I'm writing a book on the making of public memory in the Philippines. You know, who is grieved, who is not grieved, and why? Who is counted, and what are the degrees of grievability? Who is erased, right? And I also want to map the comfort stations, make a map, and present it to the International Sites of Conscience, the International Coalition for the Sites of Conscience. And sadly, when the international community says, yes, you know, you should recognize these sites, that's the only time the Philippine government will say, oh, yes, we should recognize. So that's the route that we have to take, and that's the route we will take. So, thank you.
That's very admirable of our speaker to do that. She has the experience and knowledge and connections. Thank you.
My question is very short. Why do you have to depend on Japan, the government, and institutions when we all know that these governments, institutions, they are also part of the oppressors? So, oppressors.
They're part of the oppressors, yes.
So why do we have to depend when we have not government organization? I mean, why can't we just push through? Push through with what we want.
Just push through with the memorials and other projects, because she said Japan and the government are part of the oppressor class.
But that's what Dorian Chua, the Tulay Foundation, the FlowersForLolas, they put the money up. It was a private endeavor, the Comfort Woman statue in Rojas Boulevard. They just did it, right? They used their money, and it was taken down, you know. And so I take your point that, but having been inside government for 13 years, I feel, yes, you are correct. There are very, very oppressive structures and very oppressive groups and individuals. However, there are also very hardworking, honorable, honest people in the lower echelons in government. Like when there's a typhoon, they're in DSWD until 11 at night. There are decent people in the system. And the fact is, the state institutions have the kind of budget that NGOs don't have, right? And why shouldn't taxpayers' money be used to commemorate what is public memory?
the whole Comfort Women campaign in the Philippines actually began and still continues to be mainly a private effort by advocates and by the victims and by the descendant families and volunteers. But you know, as I discussed earlier, yung question of justice is not simply rendering justice to the individual victims. The whole Comfort Women question, at least in the Philippines, has very profound implications, even in terms of the foreign policies that the Philippine government has to adopt. And then when you talk about a historical injustice, well, even I think the Nuremberg trials, involving the Nazi war criminals took several decades and took a very huge international campaign outcry in order to be tried. And I think in terms of the Comfort Women campaign here, the Asian Women's Fund, although it was not the fund that the victims have been demanding for, was in fact actually a recognition, although unofficial, by the Japanese government. It was accompanied by private letters of apology by the then state leaders of Japan to the individual victims. So it sort of runs 2 or 3 steps of the official recognition and reparations that the victims were asking for. And I think that's a very important milestone in terms of the campaign for justice. It's something that we can build on in the future. The campaign for justice for Comfort Women also has implications for international humanitarian law, so that it has to be pursued. We know that there have been several developments, positive developments in recent years with regards to the question of women in armed conflict and military sexual violence issues, but they again have fallen short of really demanding accountability on the part of governments that have committed that have sanctioned those crimes against women. So these are things that we need to consider. Why we have to carry on and account and demand accountability from the states, from states guilty of these crimes.
And the last thing I want to say is that many activists and advocates are dear friends of mine, and I noticed that at a certain point they have compassion fatigue. It's like there's so many injustices, so many causes, and you fight, you struggle, you think you have a win, and then before you know it, you won the battle, but you lost the war. And 30 years have passed, and here you are again fighting for the same thing. And I think the resources for NGOs and for private individuals, as well as the emotional capacity to keep going for decades, sometimes, people get tired. And so I feel that we should be able to expect our institutions we should be able to institutionalize the causes that we fight for in the streets. That's what I learned from my mother, because you have to stoop to conquer. If you can't make it into a law, then you ranted and raved, and then you died. And I'm not saying that it meant nothing. I'm saying that it has the potential to be forgotten unless you institutionalize it.
Thank you for your very frank and very honest and inspiring answers. We'd like to invite the 2 panelists here to give their closing statements to this very thought-provoking, enlightening, and inspiring talk. We'd start first with the reactor and finally with our speaker. Your closing statement to the public, to the media, and maybe to the government of the Philippines also, now that not yet resolved this issue of the comfort women. Ms. Sharon Silva of Lila Pilipina.
I'll just say 3 slogans to summarize what I feel should be done. One is justice for Filipino stop all wars of aggression, stop military sexual violence against women. And these are things that our Lolas have confronted in the past and that many women all over the world are still confronting to this day. So the fight goes on. We all need your support. Let us not give up on this fight.
Ms. Sharon Cabusao-Silva, a very courageous stalwart of Commonwealth women from Lila Pilipina. Now we'd like to invite Ms. Lila Ramos Shahani for her closing statement, and we'd like to thank her for taking the time to do research, interviews, and to write international publications, and most especially for her plan to write a book and also to help memorialize the Comfort Women tragedy and to fight for their cause. A closing statement from our speaker today, Ms. Lila Ramos Shahani.
I just want to dedicate my work to the advocates who, this is a labor of love on the part of people like Miss Sharon and Virgie and Ma'am Tessie. I mean, you know, Sharon and I communicated on Facebook until 4 in the morning. I'm asking her all these questions.
Wow,
And she
walang
takes the
tulog.
time to answer every question. And it was the same thing with Attorney Virgie. I mean, Facebook is like my database. And this is, she's not being paid, I'm not being paid. This is all labor of love. And may we continue to have the tenacity and the energy and the strength for what is truly a good fight. And ultimately, I want to thank the advocates. I want to thank Wilson because really I told him there are so many Chinas and so many different kinds of Chinese perspectives. And in the fight for the West Philippine Sea, we tend to forget these very important cultural nuances. My grandfather was ambassador to Taiwan for 10 years, and we really honor, I mean, the culture is so profound and important. So we're very grateful to the Filipino-Chinese community also, the Wachi guerrillas who did so much, all the human rights advocates, and ultimately my work is dedicated to the Lolas. I met them long ago. My mother really fought for them, and I am ashamed that my department ignored them, and that is why I was determined to bring their story to light. And if it has to be through international means, so it becomes recognized in the national arena, so be it. So, I feel that we should all be vigilant about the tendency to other, to look at people as others. You know, the lower class are others. The drug users are others. The Muslims are others. Disabled people are others. You know, at some point you become other. And the question is, why do you need to think in terms of us versus them? Why do we not see the way we look at a cat, a dog, a bird? You look at another human being, you look at their eyes, you see the pain that they've experienced, and you connect. You feel compassion. And may we not lose that ability to see the humanity in all different kinds of people, regardless of whether they are of a different culture, a different religious persuasion, a different sexual persuasion. It doesn't matter. We have to remember that compassion is the greatest gift. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming here today.